Hey guys, it's the Funky Mallow, and today we're going to make a tier list on the various guards on NBA Infinite. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I've already made a video trying this out, and it took me 40 minutes. It was really long, and I thought I was going fast in those 40 minutes. So let's try this again, and I'm going to try to give a much quicker abbreviated tier list. But there's a lot I want to talk about. So if you feel like I'm rushing through something, it's probably because I did, and I think the best way to kind of solve that is to just go crazy in the comments. Let's discuss and kind of give our points because I'm happy to give long drawn out explanations, but I also want to keep the video concise and just give you guys the basic rundown. You may know me in the game. My username on there is BD Mallow, and I am a top ranked player in 3v3. I have been first in multiple seasons since the major update, as well as before the major update on the NA server. So I'll give you my take on the guard position because I think it's pretty unique from what I see a lot of people complain about with guards. People treat guards very differently, and I think my perspective on how guards are supposed to be played might enlighten some players or at least create some interesting discussion. So to start, a big thing about the guard is I think there's really two main ways that guards can be very effective in the meta, and that's going to kind of dictate my first S rank player, and it's Steph Curry. I don't think this will surprise many people. I almost exclusively run with Steph Curry. Whoever I'm playing with, usually one of them is running Steph Curry because his game plan, his role is to be that offensive scorer. Obviously, get the threes, get the lead, but he really does it better than anybody else. His defense is not bad. His defense is actually quite underrated. He can hang with a lot of people. He can steal surprisingly well. He's got good speed. He's got a small frame, so he's kind of good at dodging screens. His defense is not bad, but he's by no means a defensive specialist. But even with his downsides on defense, his offense is really what can help build a lead in games. It's one of the reasons why a lot of times we're okay with someone scoring a two because everyone scores twos in this game. It's very easy to score a two. But when you can score a three, that really sets you apart from your opposition in the vast majority of games. And no one's better at doing that than Curry. I really stand by that. His skills, his stats, his gameplay, it all works for that. He can break on his own. He can use screens from a teammate. He can be very dynamic. He can use his speed. He's got a bit of everything on offense, and he's a really complex character in a lot of good ways. So I think he's a clear S tier pick. And now I'm going to go over a newer card in the game that a lot of people would put at the S tier. And I think this is going to look really controversial, but I would put him at A tier, and that's Russell Westbrook. He's a really fast card, and he's got a three. His three is not bad. It's around the 750 mark, but he has 3 point pull up pro level three, so that's enough where you definitely want to take threes if you can get it. I'm not a big believer in him making his own three as well as Curry. It's not that he can't do it. He's got a whirlwind that, considering his low dribble, it actually breaks way more than you'd expect. He's got surprisingly good defense despite a relatively lower defensive stat. He doesn't break much, and I think his speed might help with that as well. But at the end of the day, it really goes down to what the role is for your player, for your guard. And his role is mainly to get twos. And that's going to be a common thing that I spend a lot of time talking about. That's why I'm going to be a lot more quicker about it this time here is you don't really want a guard that takes a lot of twos because if that's the case, if twos is your main offense, why are we running the guard position? You can get a big like a Giannis or LeBron that scores twos, but the difference is that Giannis or LeBron is a much better defensive piece than Russell Westbrook. Westbrook is quick. He's not bad at all on defense. He's no slouch. His rebound is actually better than LeBron and other players too. Like he's got a lot to him. But still, defensively, I would much rather have a Giannis or LeBron because the blocks, especially with the buffs to block since the update as well, blocks are very effective. And it just feels like with Westbrook, you're playing a style where you almost don't need the guard position. But he's not bad. A tier is very usable. I would say he's definitely a competitive player, and he's able to do a lot. He doesn't break that consistently, but he can maybe get a three here or there from a break. He doesn't use screens that much because he's kind of big, but he's got the speed. So if you can get a screen and get him open, it's possible. It's mainly it really depends on who you're against, but I think at the end of the day, he doesn't have the same 3-point threat as someone like a Curry, and his defense is also not as impressive as some other cards that we're going to go into, like Chris Paul, which I would say is an S tier player. He does not want to be the main offense the way Curry does. His main role is to be that defensive stop on the perimeter. He is, in my opinion, the best perimeter defender in the game. I know steals have gotten nerfed, but his exclusive skill is still very, very powerful. Where if he stays in the opponent's contest zone for at least 1 second onward, he will trigger their easy steal state. So he puts that guard on a timer where if they're holding the ball even over a second, now they have to worry about getting stolen from by Chris Paul or by one of Chris Paul's teammates because it's very easy to steal if that easy steal state is triggered, and no one triggers it as well as Chris Paul. The update does not change that. The update does make some other guards a lot worse, and I'll go over that in time. But for Chris Paul, his steal game is still very much alive, and I'm still a firm believer that he's the best perimeter defender in the game. If you have a Curry on the other team, Chris Paul is the best guy to combat that. Now, the problem with Chris Paul versus Westbrook is even though Westbrook is an A tier in my eyes versus S tier Chris Paul, the majority of games you're probably going to want Westbrook over Curry or over Chris Paul because you're not going to see Curry in every game. And if you don't see Curry in the game, Chris Paul's value diminishes greatly because he doesn't really get to use his skills the same way. Like usually if you don't have a Curry on the other team's lineup, it's because they're going for someone that can dunk or someone that goes for twos and can break. And so like there's of course Harden and different exceptions to that as well. But Curry likes to hold the ball a lot, and that makes Chris Paul really good. Westbrook can also do that, but he also can go for a quick dunk where Chris Paul can't do much of anything. So even though the tier list is going to have obviously one player better than another, it's important to remember that it's all perspective and based on matchups because Chris Paul can be very useful. He's kind of like insurance. If you pay for insurance, it can really save you in a big accident. But if you don't have an accident, then you kind of pay that insurance money for nothing. I still stand by him being better value than Westbrook because in the hardest of games, when the other team has a 3-point scorer, I think Westbrook would kind of be a bit more of a liability than Chris Paul. But I understand if you guys choose someone like Westbrook because the majority of your games you're not going up against Curry, then yeah, Chris Paul is not going to be as important or as impactful as someone like a Westbrook. But even without a Curry, Chris Paul still has a great bailout option, so that helps as well. He's got a good bailout. He's got the potential for three, but it's not that great, just like with Westbrook. So it's mainly you want to use him for defense, you want to use Curry for offense. Westbrook is an offense that is mainly twos, unfortunately, but he brings a lot of other things to the table that makes him A rank. He's got really good rebound. He's got decent pass. He's not that bad on defense. He can kind of stay on people like Curry well enough. So he is still really good. Now, going forward, we have Carter and Drexler. And I want to kind of rush through these guys because mainly they have some good steal potential. Carter even gets blocked surprisingly well. But the main thing is they're mainly 2-point scorers. I know they have a good 3-point skill, like their attributes are good for three, but it's a lot harder to make your own 3-point shot with these guys compared to Curry. So what you'll see these guys normally do is they go for dunks or they go for a break and try to get a mid-range shot like SGA, and that's kind of their downside. And it's a big one because if you're going to just go for twos and your defense is fine but not great, it's hard to justify using you instead of a proper guard like one of these guys or even just a big and say let's go triple big and just not. We'll have consistent twos with a big like Giannis, but we'll also have better defense. So it just feels like they don't have anything that really sets them apart, and it's kind of hard to justify having them on your team for that reason. Now SGA got worse because steals did get nerfed. Instant steals where you just kind of spam the steal button to get a quick steal off the rip off someone, that's been nerfed pretty heavily. I don't think that affects Chris Paul the same way because if you instant steal with Chris Paul, it's a lot harder to trigger his exclusive. With Chris Paul, you really don't want to start stealing until after you put them in the easy steal state. But with SGA, you can't put them in the easy steal state that easily because he doesn't have that exclusive. So you're normally spamming steal a lot more and trying to just get that hand animation where you kind of stumble them or just get that quick steal. And that just got very clearly nerfed. even without that nerf, he was not A tier. He was maybe up at the top of B. But with that nerf, he's definitely gone down. And again, he can get threes, but he normally makes his own two more than he makes his own three. So he kind of has the same problem as these guys. Kevin Durant is technically a forward, but I feel like he plays like a guard, just like Vince Carter. His defense is better than these guys. He's actually got really good defense because he has the Prince of Pursuit skill, and he doesn't break that easily. He can score threes, kind of like these guys, but he's mainly there for the two. He's a decent bailout, but he's nothing special. I would put him at B tier. And Ray Allen has an amazing three. He's fast, but he just doesn't make his own three that well. Like a lot of these guys, like it sounds like they can, but I don't see it happen enough in a game where it's like, okay, they can actually do something. And his defense is a lot worse than these guys, so I would put him at C tier for that reason. He's pretty easy to break, and while his stats are good, he doesn't really pull it off in a game for getting three. Now, there are some guards that I haven't seen in the game yet. This new KD is not completely out, so I can't comment on the players that aren't in. I'm only going to talk about players that I feel I can really argue for their positions. So if I don't put some guards, you can ask me about it. I can give you my take, but it's very possible I just don't know enough about the guard because even with all my games, I don't see Devin Booker very often. He's not someone that people use in high-ranked 3v3, and so for that reason, I'm not going to bother really discussing him. I would just say my answer on him is don't get him. He doesn't seem very good. Now, Luka is interesting. His defense is kind of in this level, but I would actually put him up here, which is really weird because these guys have better defense. The reason why is I think he can fight for three a lot better than these guys can. He's not able to get threes as consistently as like a Curry. But what I like about him is he does have a lot of threat because he's able to go for that step back three pretty well. It's relatively quick, kind of like Harden. And he's also able to get a good bailout too. And so at the very worst, he will bait out a top defender from the other team. So if you run him with someone else, one of them can be the distraction that guards the main offensive threat, and then whoever's not being guarded can go crazy as well. Obviously, this is very lineup dependent because if the other team has two good defenders, it's hard to really get value out of Luka. But I do think Luka's offense at least gives him a game plan, right? Like these guys, your game plan is already to go for twos. I feel like at that point, why are you running guard? At least with Luka, I can see it. You're trying to score threes. And I think if you're not trying to score threes with guard, the only other reason you use guard is if it's like Chris Paul. You're trying to stop threes. Either you're trying to score threes or you're trying to stop threes. And the only reason Westbrook is high, despite not doing either of those things very well, is he's so well-rounded on both of those. His defense, because of his speed and his other attributes like his rebound, he's got enough variety and enough overall stats that it kind of pushes him above. But honestly, if he didn't have the crazy rebound and his stats were a bit lower, he wasn't as crazy fast, he would be over here. But because his stats are so good, he's able to kind of brute force his way into the A tier, at least in my eyes. But at least here with Luka, I see what he's doing. He's trying to go for threes like Curry, but he's just clearly not as proficient at it. And his defense is also worse, which puts him at A. Although with Curry, even with Curry, you might want to switch and have someone like Chris Paul guarding the other team's perimeter defender. So you would put Curry on someone like a Jokic. Then actually Luka's better because Luka's better guarding Jokic than Curry is. So it does depend. Even though his defense is in the majority of cases worse, it's really hard to say it's always worse because this game can be quite dynamic and it really depends on the lineups. Sometimes Luka's rebounding is actually really huge and it actually can decide a game. Other times it's kind of useless. But overall, I would be happy putting him at A, although I could see the argument for B as well. Now, going forward with some more guards, we've got all these three here. I don't think they're in the game yet. They might be in the Chinese version. I think this guy's in the player trial match feature. That's relatively new, but I haven't tried him out, so I can't talk about him. Anthony Edwards is an interesting one because he did recently get buffed. His 3-point went up by quite a bit, but his main problem is he doesn't get his own three. He doesn't have a pump fake hezzy. It's hard for him to get that three, and his defense is fine. I guess I would put him here. It's really hard to really value him. Now, Ginobili is actually really solid. I would put Ginobili over here. I would say he's actually able to get a break for three decently well, and his bailout is great as well. He can go for the layup pretty effectively. So his defense is also better than Luka. I think Luka actually for pure threes is a little bit better, but when you add up the defense as well as the quicker bailout, because Luka Magic is kind of slow, so people can kind of help defense on that. It's harder to help defense on Ginobili, but Ginobili is still not insane. I would say he's better than Luka, worse than Westbrook, but still clearly below Curry and Chris Paul. Now, Brunson's really good at power abusing, but his defense is kind of whatever, and he mainly fights for twos, so that's kind of similar to SGA. You could put him here. He's pretty consistent at getting quick twos, and he's really hard to stop. It's just at that point, why are you running a guard, right? Like at least SGA and them, these guys have defense to kind of play a Chris Paul role, just not very effectively. But I just think Brunson doesn't offer that much at all. So I would even put Brunson at the top of C, which kind of hurts because I am a Knicks fan, but it's hard to justify using that kind of game plan. Now, I'm not going to talk about Booker. I just don't see him enough. I've seen Dame. It's really hard to value Dame. His defense is pretty garbage. And I think the problem is like he's just so easily outclassed. You can screen for him and go for threes, but at that point, I think you'd be better off with Ray Allen to screen and go for threes because Ray Allen's crazy fast, and his three is really good as well. So it's hard to really see the point in using Dame. It's a shame because I actually used Dame before the update. Dame was my main guard, and he actually was pretty underrated for how well he worked with screens, but screens are not as effective now after the update. You will still see people use screens. I use screens as well. I like to give screens to my guards depending on the matchup. But all in all, it's hard to really get value out of Dame. I guess that's a little harsh to put him at D. He's probably more like around here. But I just think Ray Allen's just a better version of Dame. A lot of players are honestly a better version of Dame. He also goes for dunks a lot more, which sounds like a good thing, but honestly, it's pretty easy to stop. So it's kind of hard to value Dame, which is quite a shame. He's a fun card, or he used to be a really fun card. Kyrie, similar problem where he gets a lot of twos. He can get three. I've seen people use him to get threes, but it's just like compared to other cards, there are better cards to get threes with. So it's just hard to value him. His defense is not the best either. Harden is actually pretty solid. I would put Harden here. His 3-point game is definitely possible. The problem with Harden for me is it really is a lag dependent thing. I've seen a lot of people from the EU servers using Harden and LeBron. And the thing is, when the ping is bad, you're able to score really well with Harden because he gets a lot of space when he does his step back, but he doesn't break that often. It does depend on how the other guy guards you, but usually you're able to not get broken too much by Harden. And the problem is, if the ping is bad, he can double step back, gain the space, and you can't react in time. And if you do react in time, he'll just pass out. But in most games where I have little to no latency problems, I don't see Harden become a problem. It's mainly in those games where the ping is just terrible and you can't do much that Harden and Braun become unguardable. Now, I'm going to go based on optimal conditions because the card is the card. There's not much you can do about the lag. And I would say if the lag is normal and you have a normal ping game, Harden does not break that often. I would say he actually breaks even less than Ginobili. Like it's kind of close. But at the end of the day, his game plan is still to get threes, and that fits the archetype of what you need from a guard. So even though he doesn't break that well, and his defense is atrocious, by the way, but at least his game plan makes sense for what you want from a guard, and for that reason, he's definitely comp enough to be at A tier. Now, I'm not going to go for Booker as we said. The new Paul George just came out, so I don't have enough to talk about him. Mitchell's terrible. He's just a dunker that's pretty easy to stop. You should not be using him. Tatum is a very similar story. He's maybe a little bit better than these guys. He's very slow. I almost always, you just put a big on him, and the big can, if the big can block, they can normally read him. I think your best bet is if you use Tatum, you hope the other team keeps a guard on you, and you just dunk over them. But again, at that point, you're just going for twos, and that's really not a threat. His defense is fine. It's not bad. It's actually really not that bad. I don't think his scoring is that good that I put him at KD level. I know his defense is kind of there, but his offense is really slow compared to KD, and I think he's one of the worst at fighting for threes I don't see many people use Tatum. I think I'm also a little bit biased because I've played against Tatum so well. I feel very confident about stopping his sidestep, and that really is his main gimmick. But if it's very stoppable, where you can very consistently block it, then it's gonna completely shut the card down. And so that's why I would put him at D tier. I'm not going to go for Brown. I don't think Brown is very good. I know he's legendary, but he doesn't really bring enough to the table. And I really recommend you guys stick to some of the top picks here because long term, that's going to give you the best win rate and give you an idea of how you can really make progress in the game. Some of these other cards, they're a lot of fun, but again, when you're playing a guard, you got to go for certain game plans. And these guys, what they're doing, what they offer, it's just not worth it when you can have a different piece to your lineup, like a big that can also score twos but also provide much better defense. Kawhi has great defense, but he's very slow on offense. I guess you would use him kind of like Chris Paul, try to be a defensive perimeter stopper, and he does an okay job of that, but he's kind of big, so you got to watch the screens. I'm not a big fan of Kawhi, actually. I used to love Kawhi before the update, but he just feels a lot slower now. And he does have some post-up tricks, some fadeaway stuff, but fadeaways have gotten nerfed. Stealing instantly has gotten nerfed, which hurts him as well. It's hard to justify using Kawhi. Maxi, I don't see much to really talk about. I wouldn't recommend him. Now, Francis is an epic, but I do see people use him for the double pump. And him and like John Morant, if you're going to go for these double pumps and have no 3-point game really and no really impressive defense, it's just it doesn't make sense. There's better options. If you're gonna run a dunking lineup like that, just run Giannis, right? So I'm not a fan of Francis and Morant's gameplay. I don't think it fits what you need from a guard, and for that reason, I put it at the lowest rank because it's really just what's the point of running these guys? I personally don't see it, but feel free to bring in your take on that in the comments. Cade is very similar to Brunson, where he's able to get pretty consistent twos against other guards, but it's hard to get threes with him. It doesn't make much sense. Again, honestly, these guys could even be argued for the D tier. I just think at least they're a little bit better at defending, and so for that reason, they're also at least quick on their twos. So maybe go for quick twos and try to just be consistent. But honestly, a lot of these guys you could even argue for the D tier because it's really just everything below A. I don't understand what the game plan is with these guys. I feel like they don't make sense compared to other options, and you don't get enough value to justify running them as guard. Maxi, I don't see enough in the game to really give a good take on. He's not used very often. It's a shame. I wish he was a little bit better. Trae Young, same thing. He used to be really present in this game, and now he's kind of been relegated to a kind of forgettable guard. There's no legendary version of him. Maybe that will change. Austin Reeves is new, so I can't really give a take on him yet, but maybe he'll be good. We'll have to keep an eye out. It is fun to see all these new cards because it shows that at least we got new players to look forward to. Now, Gary Payton is surprisingly good. He's very hard to break, harder to break than Chris Paul. The problem with him compared to Chris Paul puts the offensive player on a timer where they have to pass out soon, or else Chris Paul's going to go for that steal after getting them in the easy steal state. Gary Payton's very hard to break, but he doesn't have that same threat where you have to pass out. So you can spend 8 to 10 seconds trying to break Payton and then get a pass back from your teammate, and it's pretty unlikely he's going to get the steal that way. Whereas with Chris Paul, every 2 to 3 seconds you might have to pass to someone else because unless you screen him out, Chris Paul's going to really put you on that timer. And Gary Payton doesn't do that, but there's something to say about how good his defense is. He's probably the hardest perimeter defender to break, and that definitely accounts for something. So I would say he's interesting. He's for me to rate an epic that high, I think says a lot. Maybe he's not as good as SGA, just because he has like very poor offense. But I think he actually might be better than Kawhi in a lot of situations. So I would put him at B tier there, right above Kawhi. Looking at these other guards, I've seen people use Butler. I mean, you can argue he's a big maybe too, but I don't think he's that good that I'd really rank him. I wouldn't recommend using Butler. Garland, same thing. I wouldn't recommend. Same with Crawford. I've seen people use Crawford, and I don't understand why. He doesn't really fight for threes. Murray is interesting. He's good with Jokic, but I haven't seen him enough to really say where he ranks. He could be good. I just haven't seen people use him effectively yet, so I don't have much to say about him. Bautier, you could argue he's on the big tier list versus the guard tier list. He's kind of meant to stop dunkers and people that kind of go for drives, but it feels like if you're going to do that, why not just use a big? A big is better at stopping people from driving anyway. So it doesn't make sense to run that as a guard, especially when his offense is nothing to write home about. I don't know enough about Chris Paul and Paul George at these epic rarities to really rank them. Same with Klay Thompson. I don't see him much. Holiday, unfortunately, with the nerfs, is just worse. His instant steal is not as good, but he plays a similar enough role to Kawhi where I'd put him around the B tier. It's a shame because before the nerf, he actually was probably like top of B or maybe even low A because he actually fit a similar role to Chris Paul. But again, instant steal versus someone that holds the defender on a very strict timer. They didn't have the same exact role. Like if you're running with Jokic, Holiday's better than Chris Paul because Jokic and Chris Paul have pretty terrible chemistry. If you're running with Kevin Garnett or with Curry, Chris Paul's better than Holiday because Chris Paul can put him in the easy steal state, and now that makes your whole team more dangerous because now if you get some help defense from the Kevin Garnett and he goes for a steal, it's much more likely to steal the ball. So there's little things like that, little that exclusive really puts him apart from these other steal heavy guards, specifically these three. But because steals have gotten nerfed, especially the instant steals, these guys got heavily nerfed. Whereas Chris Paul got a minor nerf, but overall you weren't going for instant steals as much because if you were, you would be less likely to trigger your exclusive because if you keep going for that steal, you're not staying in their contest zone long enough to actually put them in an easy steal state. And if that doesn't make sense, feel free to ask in the comments and I can try to elaborate on that. Now, a lot of these other guards I just don't think are worth talking about. Like I know some of these guards have like a really fast shooting time and stuff, but again, if they can't make their own three, I'm going to be a broken record, but if they can't make their own three and they can't have really good defense where they stop the other team from making threes, I don't see the point of running them as guard. And that's basically my mentality on the guard position. I hope this is not too long compared to before. Any questions you guys do have, or if you feel like there's someone I should have ranked that I didn't rank, don't say Bronny James. But other than Bronny James, if there's a guard you feel I should have ranked that I didn't rank, let me know in the comments. I'm definitely more than willing to give some explanations on players I didn't rank, players that I did rank that maybe you disagree with or want more information about. But I hope this was interesting. I hope this maybe gave you guys some different perspectives on how the guard position works. And yeah, I'd like to make more videos in the future. I'll definitely look into making a big video. I think that would be very interesting as well. But that's going to be me signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys really soon. See ya.